Hello again. In this review, uniquely so far, I'm going to review two books on the same subject or about the same chap. And the first one is Jim Cirillo's Tales of the Stakeout Squad by Paul Kirshner. Paul Kirshner wrote a previous 2 volumes on the Deadly Americans, which is well worth reading. And he was going to include a chapter about Jim Cirillo in that, but he realized he had so much material, he decided to make it a full book. And then the other book is Jim Cirillo's own book, Guns, Bullets and Gunfights, Lessons and Tales from a Modern Day Gunfighter. Now, Jim Cirillo was a firearms instructor in NYPD and a very keen competitive shooter. And a new commissioner came in, and he had previously been chief in Philadelphia, and they had used this stakeout unit. So he started it in New York because there was a terrible plague of robberies of businesses, armed robberies of businesses. And the idea was to put a team of a minimum of 2 officers tactically positioned within the business in hiding. And then if the bad guys appeared, then they could solve the problem. And that was the stakeout unit. Jim Cirillo, at the same time, they were getting rid of quite a number of firearms instructors. So Jim Cirillo was persuaded, rather reluctantly, to join the stakeout unit. And on his first stakeout, which was only the second stakeout of the unit, he was confronted by 3 armed robbers and shot all 3 of them. And in his book, he describes it very, very well. He describes his first shooting, and the way he describes it was he became 2 people. One was kind of was full of doubts and wondering why, but the second part was just performing technically and tactically absolutely flawlessly. So what he was actually describing was subconscious access. And I think it was probably the first book to describe this. And obviously this comes into neuro-based training and so on. And Marcus did actually make that point to me when we both read that book. And he highlighted it to me. He said, do you understand the significance of this? So Jim Cirillo was partnered up for many of the stakeouts with a chap called Bill Allard, and the 2 of them really were the most successful. And one of them was been in the most gunfights in New York. It was either Allard or Cirillo, if you tot it all up, and none of them really kept score. They each carried 3 3 handguns. In the case of Cirillo, it was a 4-inch 38, a snub Colt, and a small Volta concealed. And in the case of Allard, he carried a 45, which he allowed himself to do as an instructor, and 2 38s. And quite often they had a long gun as well, sometimes a shotgun. And they quite often would use more than one of the handguns. They would fire many, many shots in some of the shootouts. And in both books, a lot of the shootouts are enumerated, and there's quite a lot of humor involved as well. Cirillo is a very, very funny type of guy. There's some YouTube clips of him telling some stories, and some of the encounters were either gruesome or hilarious. And one of the things that Cirillo and Allard did was experiment with ammunition, and in particular Jim Cirillo experimented with loading bullets backwards for more effect and so on. And what they would do is rush to the morgue and watch the guy they'd shot being opened up and the bullets extracted to see what happened to them. And they were nicknamed by the medical examiners the ghouls, because they were gleefully looking at these bullets. Oh, this one didn't expand as much as I thought, and so on. And the other thing that mentioned in Jim's book is the failures they had in the unit, and they've seen almost every type of ammunition fail, right up to 12-gauge slugs. So stopping power, which a lot of people term as a myth, probably that term shouldn't be used. Stopping power doesn't really exist. If you shoot somebody with a 12-gauge slug and they keep on fighting or keep on moving, you know, what is going to stop them? I really Stakeout unit became a political hot potato because most of the businesses were in minority areas, and most of the bad guys they shot were from the minorities, particularly black. And on the other hand, most of the businesses were owned by minorities, or certainly had minorities working there, and the customers were usually from the area and minorities as well. And they actually welcomed the fact that these robberies were being stopped. But a new commissioner came in, and the press got wind of some of the shootings, and questions were asked and so on. And it was just unfortunate. And as Cirillo said, he said we were begging for some white guys to come in and rob us. He said the only white thing we ever shot was a Volkswagen getaway car. So you can imagine what it would be like in these days, trying to have a unit like that. Just couldn't happen. I first heard of Cirillo from Colonel Cooper. He mentioned him in Austria, 76, and he really admired him. And then Masayub used to tell stories, and he could do accents and used to imitate Jim Cirillo. And he had actually done the first real inside story on the unit for a police magazine. And, you know, he'd ridden with them and been out on the streets with them and so on. And then I never met Jim Cirillo, but one of the times I was at Fletzy, it was raining heavily in Georgia, and I was sheltering in the range tower, and the chap who was running the range tower, one of the Fletzy instructors, who I think is mentioned in this book, but I never got his name, and he said to me, "You're from England, right?" I said, yeah. He said, "You're a friend of Warren." I was with Warren Butler, and I said, "Yeah." He said, "He may just be the best instructor we've got here." So, oh, that's great. He said, "He reminds me a lot of my old friend Jim Cirillo." My ears pricked up at that, and I got talking to him about Cirillo, and he said they never appreciated him at Fletzy. He had really good ideas based on street experience, but you know, federal bureaucracy is entrenched in the old, this is how we've always done it and so on. They never used him. And the thing I never understood is why they never used him to train the air marshals, because basically the FAM role is an airborne stakeout. And he was working for Fletzy at the time that the unit was stood up, and they could have sent him to Marana and done. I never got to the bottom of that. Neither Warren or this chap knew the reason for that. Probably it was too good an idea. Jim Cirillo died a few years ago. He was still teaching in the civilian world, commercial world, and was a highly popular instructor. The books are really eye-opening books, really an inside view. Jim's book, obviously, his first-hand experience, but Paul Kirshner has done a really good job of putting a lot of material together. He interviewed Bill Aylard for the book and some of the other guys from the SOU, Stakeout unit, and so on. And terrific books. I'll put the links to both of them, and they should be on any shooter's bookshelf for sure.